Are you thinking of buying a home in Portugal as an expat? If so, you'll need a team. In this video, we'll talk about the three, maybe four people that you'll need to assist you in the home buying process. Now, we are not real estate experts. This is just based on our own experience of buying a home here. And believe me, we made plenty of mistakes. At the end of this video, we'll talk about what we would do differently if we were starting the process over today. We hope that by sharing our story that we can help you in your own search for a home here in Portugal.
I'm Matt,
And I'm Dawn.
and we're the Unretirees. And last year, as we were approaching the traditional retirement age, we realized that we didn't want to retire, but we also didn't want to put off our dream of living abroad and traveling the world either. So now we live as digital expats on the silver coast of Portugal. And this channel is about living abroad, remote work, and travel over 50.
In our last video, we shared our experience of finding the right property and location here in Portugal. If you'd like to see that video, we'll leave a link to that. But once we chose our property, we needed to build a team to help us through the home buying process. And as you'll see in this video, that was a lot easier said than done. So here's our list of three, maybe four people that you'll need in the home buying process here in Portugal. So the first people that you will need are some real estate agents. And yes, that's plural. In the US, there is a centralized MLS system, and you can go on Zillow or Realtor.com. You can look up pricing history for a home. You can see what else is on the market. You can see recently closed comps for the area. You've got access to all of that information, and you can contact a buyer's agent who can show you pretty much anything that's listed on the MLS.
So how it works in Portugal, it's very different. So first off, there's no central MLS-like system. And so it's very difficult to first see all of the properties that are for sale, to see what their prices are, to get an idea of pricing history, and even to see the comps of recently closed transactions. It just doesn't exist. The other thing that's different is working with an agent. So an agent is connected to a firm, but oftentimes these agents can only show you properties that are connected or have agreements with that firm. What that means is if you are looking for several listings in a single area, you may need a different agent to show you each of those properties. And in fact, we ended up dealing with 5 different agents in this process. This is why in our last video, we recommended that before you do a scouting trip, that you really work hard to narrow down your choices, because otherwise you'll be working with a lot of different agents.
Yes, as Matt said, we did work with 5 different agents, but those were the listing agents representing the sellers and the properties that we wanted to see. We do think that you should have a real estate agent representing you, but we did not have one. We negotiated a price with the listing agent directly, and we ended up getting an appraisal later, and the price checked out. We ended up getting a good deal. But it worked out for us. The listing agent was just phenomenal, and he really helped a lot. After we closed, he took us to get our utilities turned on. He referred us to a painter and a property manager that we love. And I think he even helped you get shoes.
He did. Yeah, he did.
So this was a risk not having a buyer's agent, but everything went very smoothly. We had one small glitch, but otherwise everything went very smoothly.
Yeah, and the listing agent lives in the area as well. So he's born and raised in this little town and knows everybody. So that was a big plus as well. So the first person on your team is a real estate agent, but the second person on your team should be a real estate lawyer. In the US, having a lawyer or not is really dependent on the state that you are in. I mean, we have purchased houses in states where no lawyers are expected and purchased houses in states where they're absolutely required. But if you're doing a transaction where a real estate lawyer is required, it's pretty easy to find a real estate lawyer. In Portugal, it's a little bit different. Having a lawyer is important because contracts are in Portuguese and you don't, at least we didn't speak the language. The second thing is that there are rules and laws that are different in Portugal than they are in the United States. And the third is that the title process is different here in Portugal than it is in the United States. So having a lawyer is important. That being said,
We actually had a really difficult time finding an attorney. We made a lot of calls, we asked for a lot of referrals, and we had a really hard time. We did eventually find a lawyer who agreed to work with us. But as we got into the real estate transaction, our calls and our emails were not returned. And so we ended up having to purchase the property without a lawyer. We do not recommend this. And if we had to do it all over, we would have started the process of looking for one probably months before we actually came out here and purchased the property.
Yeah, I think that's right. So we have a real estate buyer's agent as the first person, and a lawyer as the second, but the third person on your team should be a mortgage broker. Now, in the U.S., a mortgage broker, easy to find. They have access to a lot of different mortgage products from a lot of different providers, and they can help you through the process of applying for and getting that loan through. In Portugal, it actually works very, very similarly. Now, there are differences in terms of the way that loans operate. So, for example, for a foreign buyer like us, it's required to have 25 or 30% down. And whether it's 25 or 30 is going to depend specifically on the bank. Sometimes the banks will require you to have a life insurance connected to your property, and other banks won't. And generally speaking, there is a limit to the length of time, the number of years that your loan can be. And it's based on the fact that they don't want to have a loan out on somebody who is over the age of 75 or 80. And again, that's going to depend on the bank. So you may, if you move to Portugal or you buy a house and you're 60 years old, you may only have 15 years for that loan. And in some banks, you may have 20 years for that loan, which is just a little bit of a different thing. That being said, having a mortgage broker helps you navigate through this process, helps you with the loan application and in getting it all approved.
Yeah, and I just want to say that if you do get a mortgage, even if you want to pay it off early, that age restriction means that you're qualifying at the higher payment. So as you formulate your budget for buying a home in Portugal, if you decide to get a mortgage, that's just something to keep in mind.
That's right.
Now, for our experience, we had a mortgage broker that was referred to us by the listing agent for the property that we purchased, and he was absolutely phenomenal. This was such a smooth process. He spoke English, which was really important because even if we spoke a little bit of Portuguese, which we didn't, there was just too much at stake to misunderstand something that we were agreeing to. So he was very patient with us in answering all of our questions. He was very responsive, and this part of the process was, again, very smooth.
It
We
was.
really got lucky.
All right. Well, you've got a buyer's agent, you've got a lawyer, and you've got a mortgage broker. The fourth person that you would want to have on your team is an inspector. Now, of course, in the US, you hire an inspector and he or she goes through your property that you're considering buying and writes you a report about things that need to be fixed and things that you may want to fix. It works very similarly here in Portugal, where you hire an inspector and they go through the property and they tell you what needs to be fixed, what doesn't need to be fixed. But the reason why we think it's specifically important in Portugal is because the construction and code is just different here in Portugal than it is in the United States. They build things out of different materials. We just don't understand the questions to ask or the things to look for. So having an inspector involved who's familiar with Portugal code and construction practices, as well as specifically with the area that you're in, we thought was important.
Now, we were back in the United States by this time, so we were not able to be on site during the inspection. But fortunately, our inspector did a really great job doing a video walkthrough in addition to a detailed report. So we could actually see everything that he was referencing. He highlighted a couple of small issues that we were able to get taken care of. And that process was also, it went really well. And the fact that he did a video inspection and a detailed report and was available for any questions. Like Matt said, we didn't really know what to ask. And so he was really patient with all of our questions. I'm sure they were dumb questions. But he really gave us a great peace of mind when we bought this property.
That's great. Well, so now that we're at the end of this process, I mean, we closed on this house many months ago and have moved in. What would you do differently the next time?
Well, I think one thing that we forgot to mention that was really important is that we did hire a translator to come with us to the closing table, and she was able to walk us through all the documents. I think that's also a good person to have on your team. But in terms of what we would do differently, I think that we would have made more time to actually work with a buyer's agent, even if it meant that we had to work with several different ones to look at several different properties. I just think buying a home in a new country, it's just smart to have somebody representing your interests. And the other thing I think we would do differently if we knew how challenging it was going to be to find a lawyer. I don't know if that's everybody's experience or if that was just our experience, but given how challenging that was, I think that we would have started the process of looking for somebody several months before
Yeah.
our scouting trip. What about you?
Yeah, well, that may have just been that lawyer.
Mhm.
Uh, I think those things are right. I mean, I think for us, we had a couple of big wins. First off, the mortgage broker was phenomenal.
Mhm.
The inspector was phenomenal. We caught a break having the real estate agent, the listing agent, be somebody who is known and very familiar with people around here and knew how to connect us into the right places. Um, so I don't really have any additional things to say that we would do differently. But if you would like to see more about our house buying journey, check out this video.